Welcome to Your Pathway to the Emirates, our new podcast channel. Here we will explore exciting real estate opportunities across Dubai, Abu Dhabi, and other Emirates in the UAE. Beyond property, we'll also delve into important topics to support anyone considering a move to the UAE, covering schools, tax, visas, company setup, relocation, and lifestyle. Our goal is to provide a comprehensive, one-stop guide that helps you navigate every step of relocation or investment in this dynamic region. Stay tuned for insights that will empower your journey. So let's get started.
So welcome to the podcast. And today we're joined with Lisa and Karlijn. So Lisa, obviously from CSP Group. So if you're interested in any relocation, you need to speak to her, and we'll have all the contact details below. And Karlijn's joining us for the first time. Welcome, Karlijn.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And maybe you can sort of do a small introduction, like one of your elevator pitches, if you like.
Happy to do that. So my name is Karlijn Jacobs, originally from the Netherlands. Back in the Netherlands today, actually. It was a little over 15 years ago that I left the country to be the partner of my husband's international assignment. Or back then, I think you would refer to me as the trading spouse. I was one of the lucky ones. I found a job that allowed me to continue my career. I was a children's and family therapist. And in that capacity, I learned about how international relocation impacts family life, and also the other way around, how family life impacts the quality of a relocation and or an international assignment. And over the past 15 years, I've been working in the direction of where we stand today. I'm the founder of an organization called Expat Valley. We offer global family support. We support organizations that sponsor family relocations as well. But in the capacity of this call, I'll focus on what global family support looks like and why it is important. And even more so, a big part of my work is about advocating for the needs and well-being of children that accompany international relocations. It's often overlooked or one of the many things that people are juggling. And I know the two of you can relate to this as you see this in your work as well. That children are impacted by international relocation. That's very normal. Parenting is difficult. That's also very normal. And what I try to do with my work is make it a little bit easier to anybody that has access to our resources or my expertise. So happy to be here and share all the tips and advice that I can put in a podcast, hopefully making it a little bit easier for your listeners when they relocate with their family.
No, excellent. And thank you for that. Now, there's two things I found when we're trying to sort of talk to clients, and that restricts them from the move. One is they're worried about their children, and their children after a certain age also sort of kick back saying, oh, we've got friends here, we don't want to move, even though the UAE is probably a better country for them to grow up and be educated in, and for safety as well. So that's one aspect. So maybe you can talk us through, how do you get involved with the pre-move, for example, to sort of tell clients or their children, and how do you sort of help them navigate that process of it's not as scary as they think it is? And then we can talk afterwards about if they've arrived or when they're there, how that transition and how you help them with that.
Absolutely. To your point, if you look at the research about successful relocations, successful international assignments, family reasons or family concerns are amongst the top 3 of reasons for people not to even take on an international assignment. So refuse a job offer that might be right in front of them. And oftentimes it's not even a very well thought out discussion happening on the parental side. It's often to do with not knowing what you're signing up for and not wanting to take any risks when it comes to the needs and well-being of children.
Right. Okay. So obviously you've got the side where there's some positions or some parents don't move because of that. Their children's, not wanting to move. So you can help through that process as well. And then once they've arrived in the UAE, for example, and so if their children have arrived and they're feeling a bit worried or concerned, how do you set up that sort of mechanism to help them through that process? Is it a meeting, or is it just resources that you have on your website, which I've seen, which are really interesting? But what's the actual process to go through? Because working with children is obviously different to working with businesses and owners, obviously. So just wondering how that works.
Sure. So the way that our support works is we've set up different levels of memberships where people can choose to tap into the online resources that we offer. There's Global Family Library, for example, which hosts over 100 short videos on a wide range of topics related to family relocation. And this can be relevant while you're making a decision about an international assignment offer or a job opportunity that's already in front of you and you're contemplating to relocate. The Global Family Library allows parents to review topics like multilingualism, school choice, the impact on children's identity when it comes to moving to another country, having to say goodbye to friendships, managing distance relationship with extended family members. There's a whole chapter in there focusing specifically on teenagers because you mentioned those before. It's a very specific age group where you're dealing with children that have a strong opinion that influences any decisions you make. Even though they might not be part of the actual decision, you do need to incorporate their perspective on the upcoming relocation. So that's one of our online resources. Our more extensive membership also involves virtual coaching sessions with a family support consultant that helps a family navigate their unique relocation journey. As you can imagine, there's many different factors that influence the successful outcome of an international relocation. I'm not sure if we can add this to the publication of this post, but we have a great visual, which we call the global family tree. And the roots of that tree comprise all the factors that actually influence the outcome of a relocation. So it's the stage of relocation, but also the stage of life, the sense of belonging that a family has in the place that they're currently in, but also the family dynamics have an influence on what the actual relocation is going to look like, as does relocation experience. Is this your first time move? Are you moving to a third country from an existing foreign location? Are you planning to stay long-term in the country that you're moving to? Or are you planning, is this an in-between space to bigger future plans? That all determines the actual outcome of what a relocation looks like. And one of the things we do often as a starting point is a family needs and well-being assessment. So we ask both parents to go through a form of questions where we really assess the strengths of their current situation, but also the risks that could influence a successful outcome of their global family journey. And then they meet with one of our family support consultants to discuss how to improve their situation, the important decisions that they need to take. I mean, we often talk about a relocation as if it's one thing, one big decision, whereas actually it accumulates multiple small decisions. Lisa was talking earlier about the housing market in Dubai and what's available and what's not. When you think about family relocation, you need to factor in your school choice, but also the housing market. And that's just one decision to make. You need to figure out, when do you actually want to relocate? Do you relocate in between school years? Do you relocate over a larger vacation period? Or you might not have a choice and you actually need to accommodate whatever it is that your employer wants you to do. And that's when you need to move your family abroad. Or to throw in another option, the person who's taking on the job offer, they are moving first and they're setting up for the family, and the family will relocate later. There's benefits to that, but being long-term apart as a family unit obviously also comes with its risks. So I'll pause here because I can talk about this for days on end. There's so many different factors that families need to navigate. And what we try to do for them is really make it a step-by-step process as opposed to an overwhelming experience.
No, it sounds very interesting. I mean, it sounds like this is an area people don't realize it's available, this type of help. And it can relieve a lot of stress because, for example, if the family is thinking of moving and it's the right thing to do, but the children are blocking it, then you end up going backwards in your life. And then there's blocks also moving forward to say, oh, I should have moved. Maybe it would have been better. Maybe it wouldn't have. And having your support, I think, is something that could be quite unique to a lot of people that are considering the move to a different country. And on top of that, I think businesses do sort of miss out on this service because they don't realize the money and the time they spend on finding the right candidate to come to the UAE, for example, because that's what we're looking at here. And then them being blocked either by saying, oh, we've changed our mind, or when they arrive within maybe a weeks or months, deciding the role's not for them because no one's looked after the family aspect. So I think you do add a very valuable service, and I think people should consider talking to you quite strongly.
Thank you. I couldn't agree more. I referenced the research on assignment refusals earlier. 2/3 of assignments that fail, so people who actually relocated, they were set up. 2/3 of the times that international assignments don't make it to the finish line, again, it's for family reasons. It's a very big factor in the relocation industry and relocation success. And thankfully, we've been doing this for 4 years. We see an increase in corporations picking up the bill of our services. So they actually sponsor this type of support for people that are moving. And we also see families that make the investment themselves. They are spending a lot of money on all sorts of operational aspects of their relocation, which are critical to making it a success. Of course, you need a roof over your head and your kids need to be in a good school. But then if your mental health is not in order or you're really stressed out, it's not going to work. I can still remember the moment in our international assignment where my husband and I were living abroad. It was never him and his job or his career that put our relocation at risk. It was always me at times not feeling as if this was going to work for my life. And I think that's, well, you must know the stories too. You work in the relocation industry. It's usually the partner or the children that are not settling in properly, and then being a distraction to the person working and ultimately a risk to a successful outcome.
Yes, I was thinking this is where Lisa can come in, because obviously she has experience of the relocation side, and it would be interesting to know what she feels about your service and how important it is from her experience.
Well, I think Karlijn's service is fantastic, and I would recommend it to anybody. I think, as she mentioned earlier, it's really important to, before people decide to make a move, I think that's the best place to catch them and talk them through exactly what they could expect, what the outcomes could be, what everything looks like, positive or negative, So I highly recommend it to HRs, to anybody that I deal with and that I could potentially promote her service to in terms of corporates, even just individuals. If they've never lived in this region, you don't know what you're expecting. Look, it's very normal here, but, I think people may be moving to Saudi for the first time, for example. That's a bit more, that's different to the UAE. UAE is quite a easy place to, settle and become accustomed to. But Saudi is a bit like the old UAE, where things are still progressing. And I think an assignment, for example, into Saudi would obviously benefit hugely, for those employees that they're trying to take over, or the family, for those kind of families to have this kind of support prior to their move or prior to their decision it's invaluable, honestly. I had a family move over, and the wife wasn't happy, the kids aren't doing well in school. And that would have been the perfect opportunity for Karlijn to have helped with having that discussion with the family, the kids, prior to the move, or even once they're here, if they're not happy, just helping them to maybe get over what the issues are and how to get beyond that even.
That's great.
Yeah.
There's one question I had is in terms of some feedback we get is, but our parents are, these are the families where they've got children, and they've obviously, they say to me, but our grandparents are there. we're going to miss them. How do you navigate that side? Because friends is one aspect. They're quite technology, they can talk on, well, they can't talk on WhatsApp in Dubai, but there are other mechanisms, and they can talk on the phone, you can do Zoom calls and everything else. But what about the elderly side? How do you navigate that and saying what the pros, how do they sort of get around that sort of block?
Well, it's an interesting question. I realize that family support is a bit of a niche thing in the relocation industry. But when, from my perspective, working in this space, we actually team up with experts in exactly this topic. So distance relationship with grandparents or aunts, uncles is one aspect that we specifically focus on. To give some tips here, ideally, when you're thinking about an international relocation or you've signed the contract, manage the communications with distant relatives in advance. So help your elderly parents set up through technology that you will be using in the future to stay connected with them while you're still sitting next to them. So do practice runs on phone calls or video calls while you're still in country, and you can help your parents set up the technology. So don't wait until you're abroad and then have your parents struggle from afar, but make sure that this is part of their rhythm. At the same time, it's also important to manage expectations. I mean, expectation management is a key component of family relocation success in all sorts of spaces, and also in this one, the distance relationships with grandparents. Knowing in advance, having a rhythm in advance established about how often will you actually visit your home country and what will a visit then look like. If I think about the many stories of people visiting their home country and then relatives and friends feeling as if, oh, great, you're vacationing here. And then at the same time, people experiencing that when you visit your home country, especially with children, it doesn't feel like a relaxing vacation. There's usually all sorts of technicalities. You need to run to City Hall to get stuff organized. You may be renting out your former home, so you need to check in on your tenants. There's other paperwork that you need to take care of. You need to balance the expectations of one set of grandparents and the other set of grandparents. I mean, I still remember the conversations with my mom. You're spending more time with your in-laws. And then I almost had to do like a mathematical comparison. Like, no, we're trying to divide the time that you get to spend with your granddaughter as equally as we can. But we also need sleep, and she needs sleep. So expectation management and prepping the tech in advance are two of the simple tips that I can give. And another aspect to this is normalizing the experience. A lot of people move abroad feeling some sense of guilt towards their children for uprooting them from school, from their friendship, guilt towards their parents, because all of a sudden the relationships between grandparents and grandchildren are more complicated to navigate. And a lot of people end up wanting to compensate for the imaginary damage that they feel they are doing. So a big part of what our family support consultants do is help normalize and process that part of the experience, and moving away from a feeling of guilt and focusing on the positive aspects and the solutions instead.
No, that's excellent. I mean, guilt is the biggest thing. I mean, that affects families who've got children or don't have children. It's still to do with their parents or their brothers or their sisters that they're leaving. And we as a property company, obviously, we try and encourage people to move, but having that support and having you talk to them, I think would be a real benefit. I mean, do you do like a short course that we could maybe send out to people about the guilt side? It'll just help us a lot, I think. But
as we are talking about this, we do discovery calls with anybody who is thinking about a move and hasn't thought about the family aspect. So that's one gateway into sort of raising that awareness and trying out with people if this is a topic that they feel they need to invest more of their time and resources in. And we do monthly webinars, actually. The next one is about the successful start of a school year. That will be end of this month. But I like the idea, as we are talking about this, we should do one about this guilt and how to navigate that aspect. So I'll definitely make sure to get both of you in the loop when we have that in the schedule.
Yeah,
sounds good.
Great.
I have a quick question. I mean, I have that guilt thing. You know, my mom lives in South Africa. She's knocking on 80. I'm knocking on 50. And I haven't lived at home for 23 years. You know, she comes over once a year for a month, but of course I feel guilty, you know, even though I've been here that long. Even post-move, you know, you have that, it's a terrible stress, actually, emotional stress that you do. You've got this guilty feeling that you're not there if they're sick, you're not there if they've stubbed their toe, you know, you can't help with moving boxes, you know, whatever the case is. So yeah, 100%. Please do something.
Funny thing is, Lisa, that you say you feel guilty because you're distant because you think you can't help. But the honest truth is, when you look at it, if you're actually there, you probably would be helping less because you'll be too busy in your own life and say, I don't have time. Yeah. And you know, you'd be more able to vocalize negatively because you are close. And when you're further, you actually be able to help more. I found with my cousin who was away for like 12 years or 14 years in Australia,
Yeah.
when she came over, it was all about family, seeing family. But the amount of time I spent with her was more than probably if she was stay in the country for 10 years.
I suppose you have more quality time. That makes sense.
And you talk differently. You actually appreciate each other's time to the minute. You don't get frustrated by, I know what parents can be like. They can push the buttons. You can go around to family's house and within 30 seconds, you already want to leave.
Yeah, exactly. Like I'm going back to Dubai tonight.
Whereas if you're distant, I think you have a different relationship. It's a stronger bond, I find, personally. I'm not sure how true that is, but that's my personal experience.
Yeah. Yeah. Two
My-
sides.
My mom was really helpful for me when I finally gathered the courage to bring it up with her, that I felt so guilty about being far away, and I felt as if it was damaging our relationship. She actually reframed that for me and pointed out that she would speak to me much more frequently than to my siblings who were in country. And we're from the Netherlands. We're talking tiny country. Like 100 km is probably, like, that's the max driving distance that it was between my mom and my brother at the time. But she would speak to me much more frequently because our relationship was very conscious, whereas theirs was, depending on the busyness of their lives. So that conscious investment led to a stronger relationship somehow. So if there's one piece of advice here, Lisa, if you have this feeling, bring it up with your mom. Be open about this. Like, this is probably bigger in your head than that it is for her. And if it is as big for her as it is for you, then at least it's something that you're on the same side of this. Like, both of you feel that it would be great if it were different, but this is the reality of your lives, and that's okay. You didn't make this choice against her. You made this choice for other reasons, and this is, it's going to sound a bit crude maybe, but this is a side effect, an unwanted side effect.
Yeah.
So hopefully, Lisa, that helps.
Yeah, thank you.
There's one thing I wanted to ask is, you have this normal transition period with children, for example. How do you know, for example, when that transition period is more, well, it's deeper? There's something to worry about if it's gone beyond a certain time frame, and what do you sort of pick up on traits that you should be noticing?
One of the reasons why we offer support over the period of a year is because we want to make sure that we keep tabs on families throughout their relocation period. Not pointing any fingers here, but what we see is that a lot of people move in the context of the management of very practical aspects of their relocation. So imagine that a settling in period is almost presented to people as if, well, about 2 months after your moving date, you should be settled in. And from a practical reality, hopefully that's true. By then you want your bank account set up and your internet working and your TV and all of that. So, but if you look at the mental well-being aspect, settling in takes a bit longer. So usually we see that people have an initial honeymoon stage where everything is new and shiny and bright and exciting, and you want to try out all the restaurants, and the fact that the supermarket takes forever is actually kind of cool because it's so different compared to back home. And then after about 4 to 6 months, many people are hit by what we call the second culture shock. So not the initial one of the different climate and the different sounds and sights of a new place, but finding that life rhythms just take so much longer than they used to. And a lot of people experience that as an uphill battle. We even see people that internalize right at that moment, like, well, if life is so difficult abroad, I'm not sure if I want to do this for longer periods of time. So that's a stage that we know is critical in many family relocations, and we want to be very proactive about warning people, like, you might be experiencing this 4 to 6 months after your moving date, and that's normal, and all it takes is giving it more time in most instances. It's also normal to see that initially, the first few months after relocating, academic performance drops. Children are getting used to a new curriculum. They need to adapt to a new instruction language, maybe, depending on the country of origin and the school language there. What we really consider to be red flags is when children really withdraw from social life for a longer period of time. when parents feel that the personality of their child almost appears to be changing, and again for a longer period of time. So if that happens for a few weeks, that's okay. Children need to process, and that takes time. But if that's something that happens for more than a month or 2 months, and they're not willing to communicate about this, or they find it difficult to communicate about this, which, I mean, the fact that the communication is difficult is not a problem in itself, but you do want to break through that pattern in your family unit. So that's when we strongly advise people to reach out and to get an expert partner on their side so they can manage the feelings and the processes of their children more effectively. When I think back about my Shanghai time, there would be people who would put their kids in therapy just as a preventative measure. I'm not saying that that's the right solution, but I understand why people would do that. It's a big impact on children's lives, and you want to make them as comfortable as possible. At least if you were to ask me, that's the approach that I would take with my kids. There's no specific red flags to look out for, but it's about understanding the context of that settling in period and keeping a good eye out for, do you feel that your children are adjusting and are they moving in the right direction of establishing friendships and finding a rhythm in school? And if you feel that their development is really pausing for more than a few weeks, that's when parents should be somewhat alarmed and seek help. And we can fix that in almost every instance.
That's good to know. And another thing is, do you do like any sessions in schools themselves? So, go to a school, work with schools as well, and sort of spread this message there. Because sometimes being in the school, having a little talk to children there, you might find there's issues which are not behavioural issues that were just related to the move, or, as you mentioned, in all your experience. Is that something you do as well, or is that something you might do in the future?
Yeah, I love this question. We found at Expat Valley with the intention of really building a strong ecosystem that supports globally mobile children and families. And that ecosystem should comprise, obviously, of families, of the organizations that sponsor their relocation, because we feel that by their decision-making, children's lives are impacted. And this really should be part of relocation support programs. And we work with service providers in that space. I was going to say a different setting, but it's not a different setting. It's just that these programs don't usually meet very frequently. But we do have part of the Expat Valley community that is focused on experts in this space. And those experts could be educators, but it could also be people who support children and families in a different capacity in the healthcare industry, for example. So the big dream is, we're not quite there yet today. But the big dream is that in a few years, we really have a global network of people that understand the complexity of international childhoods and that collaborate when there's a need for children to be supported. I wish I could present this in a more positive light, but if you think about international education, for example, there's people working there that are really strong academics. They offer almost every international school on the planet offers high quality education. It's very exciting for children to get to be part of that. But people in these schools are not usually trained in how to manage the transitions of their school community. So the children that are newly arriving, but also the children who have been in school for a year or multiple years already, but their best friend left at the end of last school year. So that transition management, the third culture kid identity that a lot of their students are facing, the multilingualism, etc., those are not aspects of traditional teacher training. So this is where we do jump in and build an ecosystem of knowledge sharing and true expertise towards those international children's childhoods.
No, I believe in your product 100%. I mean, we set up this property business and moving people to the UAE, but from a property aspect, it's just about, a lot of these companies set up just to make money. They just want to make their commission. Whereas we set up with partners like Lisa's going to help with the relocation side, and she can tap into your services for, the family side, which is excellent. But we also use the tax side. We have the business setup side, medical side. It's everything to help transition somebody over to minimize the stress. And then what we do to make sure whoever we're moving, either as a family or investment, is fully prepared. So therefore they can not only be happy where they are, it's recommending our services to everybody else, because we're not just looking after the side of the property, we're looking after them as a family. And I think that's how it's always worked, even with ultra high net worth, but any family, we need to be able to work together and make sure people are happy there.
That's a very exciting approach, and it's good to hear that you're embracing all those components. When I think back about our international assignment back in 2010, it was a local HR to local HR move. So there wasn't necessarily global mobility expertise involved. And what we experienced firsthand is that there were very genuine intentions of wanting to make our move a success, but nobody knew exactly what components it would take to bring it to the finish line. A small example, but it still makes me chuckle a little bit. So my dad was in accounting and economics, so he taught us how to do our own bookkeeping at a very young age. So I would do any of my own tax filing. In China, we didn't have to do that. My husband's company would do it for him. So I have no clue how that worked. But I remember upon repatriation, we had to do it again. I did it myself. It took me 10 business days, 36 phone calls to the tax authorities. Half of the time they would have to call me back because my question would be too complicated. And then a few months later, I was at a relocation industry event and somebody from a tax consulting company was presenting. And then it dawned on me, this is obviously a service. Somebody could have done this for us. My husband's employer would have happily paid for it if they had known it existed, but they didn't, nor did we. So it was a very stressful 2 weeks of my life that we could have outsourced. And I think it really takes that ecosystem approach that you are embracing on your end, making sure that people know what they're up against and what resources exist for them. And then it's their choice if they feel there's a value add in a certain service component or they want to do it in a different way, also fine. But at least they know that, to the point of our services, relocating your children it comes with obstacles, and that's normal, and it's stressful. And again, that's normal. And if you want and seek support, then that's available.
That's excellent. It's good to hear problems are normal, actually, because that's what people forget. They think they're just dealing with it for their first time for themselves and everything else. So, look, it's excellent to have you here today, and thank you for your time. And I really hope we can bring you back with maybe people who have made the journey and could have used your service, or maybe some people have used your service and can take it from a third person's point of view to explain how you've helped them. So I'd love to have you back and talk further on this subject and maybe bring some other people on board as well.
Excellent. I look forward to it already.
So thank you again for your time, and thank you, Lisa, as well.
Thank you. Great having you, Karlijn.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to Your Pathway to the Emirates podcast. We believe that by staying connected with our podcast and social media channels, you will gain valuable knowledge and stay abreast of the latest developments that may be of interest to you, whether you are an investor, enthusiast, or professional in the industry. Do drop us an email on info@elevation88.com if you wish us to cover any particular topics. So please follow, subscribe, and stay tuned for our upcoming episodes and updates as we continue to bring you engaging and informative content.